start recording. And just want to, first of all, welcome you. Thank you so much for making time in your day to be here with us today to talk about what has been a real labor of love, if I can call it that, over the last 6 months within our community here, which is the Athena AI governance playbook. We're going to talk a little bit more about how it came to be, and you'll get to hear from our fabulous co-chairs who are here with me today. But I wanted to just give you a little bit of setup about what it is, who we are as Athena, because I know we have a mixed group here. We have a lot of our members here, which is wonderful, and I know we have a lot of folks joining us from outside who may not be as familiar with Athena. My name is Erin Essenmacher. I am our Chief Strategy and Member Experience Officer here at Athena. And prior to Athena, I spent almost 10 years in senior leadership at the National Association of Corporate Directors. And I mention that only because, as you'll see as we talk about the playbook here today, there's a real sort of theme around governance, and that runs through everything that we've, the way that we've architected it. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is and what we see as sort of the life beyond the playbook and the other things that we hope it will help to spawn and create. The playbook is, first of all, you've all gotten an executive summary, or you should have received one. If you haven't, let us know. That just means maybe you registered a little late, and we'll make sure that you get it. The full playbook will be released on March 12th. So you're getting a little bit of a sneak preview of what's contained in the playbook. You'll also be getting, as participants in this session today, an advance copy. So we'll send it out to you before we make it available to the masses. And as you'll see as we go through, it's really been informed by a broad spectrum of perspectives, and we want to continue that. So as we're going through and talking about it, and as we get to the end, if there are other people in your community or key stakeholders when you think about this issue that you think should help us inform our final product before it comes out on May 12th, we'll talk about that as well, and would love that feedback from you. I'm just going to share a few slides here to help ground us in what the playbook is and some of the key components of it. So first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about Athena. Athena is a community of senior women leaders. So we are women who are running companies, building companies, serving on boards, thinking about the next big phase of how we want to have impact in the world. And that theme of impact really is the connective tissue of our community. At the core, we're looking at how do we take the skills, expertise, perspective, experience that we all have, and have greater impact on our businesses and our communities, on the world writ large. And that's the connective tissue. One of the things that's really special about Athena is that it's also a really diverse community in all the ways that we think about that, right? So it's women coming from all different perspectives, whether they're working on the technology side of the business, or finance, or product, or marketing, HR and people, you name it, we have them here in the community. And so it really provides a foundation to have rich discussions around everything that we talk about here in terms of the common challenges that we're all grappling with. And when we think about this issue of AI, which you'll hear more about over the course of our time here together today, I can't think of anything that is more necessary to have informed by this diverse group of perspectives than as we think about generative AI, how it's being applied, what the implications will be, and that the need to have those diverse perspectives at the table to make sure that we really are thinking about this in a responsible way, for the best and highest good for our companies, for our society, and for the world writ large. As I said, you'll hear from our co-chairs here in a second, but I also wanted to acknowledge other folks who have helped to shape this effort. We put together a working group representing some of those different perspectives, and we have some of our co-authors here with us. So Carrie Anderson, I know, is here. Hi, Carrie. I think I saw Sid Brandbein. Stephanie Gutos is here. Shara Roman, I don't think could be here today. Avril Usuri Sisk, I know, is here, and I'm not sure if Sue Lynn is here. yet, but Sulin Yap was also instrumental in helping to author the playbook. And then want to acknowledge all of the Athena members who so far have also provided expertise and perspective from all of their unique roles and the experience that they have. We did a sort of soft launch of the playbook a few weeks ago just to the community and asked for volunteers, people who wanted to read it, to give feedback, and the community did not disappoint. They stepped up. We got amazing perspective, and it really helped to further shape and hone the final document that you'll get to see here in just a little bit. So that's a little bit about who the playbook is authored by. I just want to give you a quick overview of how it's structured and what it looks like, and then we'll dive in more detail to some of these key pillars. So it's organized around 5 key pillars: duty of care, ethics, risk, and responsible stewardship, oversight of strategy and adaptability, developing a holistic ESG and tech sort of situational awareness around it. So really looking at that ESG view. And then talent, incentives, and culture, because we know that that drives so much of how we think about everything in our businesses. And then within each pillar, there are 4 key sections. So you'll see Athena's point of view on what's contained in that pillar, key considerations and recommendations for boards and leaders, executive leaders, key actions that we recommend that you take, and then questions that board members should be asking the management team. So I want to start with pillar 1, but before I do that, I think it's important to also call out that one of the reasons that we're starting with governance is because governance is foundational to everything that happens inside a company or an organization. It sets the tone for culture. It sets the strategy. It sets how we think about capital allocation and how money is spent. And so it really becomes that foundational conversation for everything that flows from it. We know when we're talking about generative AI that there are also lots of questions about, how do we implement it? How do we learn from other sectors and looking at case studies? And so those are all things that we want to flow from this. We look at this playbook as an initial offering, as a foundational document that we will then build from. That we look at it as an iterative process, because we know that this topic is not static, that it's incredibly dynamic and changing. And so we'll be continually revisiting some of the principles in the playbook and updating them over the next several quarters, months, and years, but also creating additional learnings that we can all offer to the community, whether, again, that is looking at how we are implementing AI from a industry standpoint, from a functional standpoint, and really using this, again, as a container that we can continue to have this conversation in a more nuanced way and continue to evolve the conversation as our understanding of generative AI and exponential technologies evolve. So starting with pillar 1, which is all about the duty of care. And again, it is foundational. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first, I want to introduce the co-chairs and have them talk a little bit about, I got so excited, guys, about getting right into it. Let me introduce my co-chairs first and have them each talk a little bit about their role in the process here. So Joyce, if I could start with you, have you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background and your role here.
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Joyce Lee, and hello to a lot of my friends and new friends here. Very excited to have you here. I was an institutional investor for nearly 2 decades. During that time, I talked to corporate directors, C-level executives in listed companies about their governance and shareholder value creation all the time. I also bring a perspective of being a co-founder of an AI startup last year, and also an advisor on some of the AI-powered startups in the Bay Area. The initial idea of the playbook came shortly after the GPT-4 version of the ChatGPT came out last March. I was an early adopter, but the more I use it, my sensor of governance in my brain just keep vibrating harder and harder. And I realized that this could be a huge thing that has tremendous impact on board governance and should be on most boards' agenda. And yet I didn't see much mention of that at that time. So I reached out to Heidi, who you're here next, and she immediately got what I meant. And we completely completed our article on one of my overnight flights from East Coast to back to San Francisco. We just couldn't wait. So we published the article in LinkedIn and immediately got a lot of responses. Then also that made us realize this is nothing like what we had seen in the past. It couldn't be done by the two of us. We need more perspectives. We need more talent. We need more expertise. And we knew exactly where to turn to. I'll let Heidi to tell you the rest of the story and also her background.
Thanks, Joyce. It is pretty amazing how this all began and where we are now. So Joyce and I then held a salon with Athena members, and we saw not only how much thirst there was for more information, but the deep interest in contributing to something beyond any one of us. We all saw the potential of building a brain trust and amplifying what we collectively know and understand about AI for shared ongoing navigation of what is clearly uncharted territory for everybody on this planet. And not surprisingly, we found Athena leadership, especially Aaron and Coco, to be supportive and knew the membership to be not only smart and thoughtful, curious, influential, and visionary, but across the network, it brought that deep domain expertise that Joyce was mentioning in areas like data, like law, engineering, HR, policy, finance, product. And this kind of cross-functional perspective is what's vital. This is not a technology issue that that AI brings. This is a human issue that we need to be very, very careful about. So while I've been in tech for over 20 years, including several years at Singularity University that kind of primed me for this, I'm not a technologist per se. And throughout my career, I have, however, been committed to socially conscious leadership and the use of tech to improve the human experience one way or another. And when AI, kind of was suddenly thrust into all of our hands, I saw it as both the ultimate test and opportunity for us. So, I view it as this is a time with a lot hanging on the decisions that we make today. And I believe that companies are in perhaps the greatest position of power to influence how AI is built, trained, used, deployed, and governed. And because of that, in a power to really shape our future. So we collectively as leaders, everyone on this call, and great to see some friends here as well, we all have more agency than we probably even realize because of the roles that we have within our organizations, whether on boards or in leadership positions. And not only more agency, but also I would say an obligation. And we have a short window to be super intentional with that power that we have, not just to kind of see where AI goes or to be passive about how AI is shaped. And we can't squander this opportunity. And since there's literally no one who has been here before, this playbook is a vital starting point to understanding that this is not governance as usual. It's not just tamping down to mitigate the risk, but empowering AI to proactively embed it with human knowledge, wisdom, and vision so that it operates in a way that coordinates with our best interests. And so the result has just really exceeded expectations. The experience of working with the other co-authors and all of those who contributed to it, you'll hear from today. It's just been incredible. And I just have to add that I find getting AI right to be so important that I've literally left the comfort of corporate life last fall and am dedicating my career to it, founding the Humanity Code, which is a film and impact initiative to ensure that we do encode AI with humanity's best wisdom and values. I can't describe it any other way than a calling, and I see this playbook as just a key resource in that.
Excellent. Thanks, Heidi. Megan.
Yeah, so I'm Megan Anzelk. I am a technologist, and I've spent my whole career in AI and data, spanning financial services, human capital, and professional services. And I really got involved because I think there have been two key perspectives that need amplification in this conversation. So one is more diverse voices and perspectives and backgrounds, like my co-chairs and Erin have highlighted. The other is that, and I certainly have a biased perspective given my career history, but I think more voices from highly regulated industries who have been using AI for decades in responsible and ethical ways, right? I think they can help kind of lead the charge in how to do this and to do it well. I've seen firsthand in my own career both the financial and organizational benefits of AI, but certainly as others are alluding to, more of a kind of the technology perspective, it's very easy to build an AI model. It's very hard to build one that is responsible, ethical, compliant, and that drives long-term value creation for an organization. And so appropriate governance is really a very critical piece to achieving that. And this, I think, can play a big role in that part of the conversation. So I'm super excited about what we've built and the role of this playbook in helping to shape and drive really pragmatic AI governance that is going to be very practical and actionable for organizations. And I'll turn it over to Andrea to let her introduce herself.
Thank you so much, ladies. You're a tough act to follow, and I feel really privileged to have been part of this core team and larger team as well. I think this experience, which is maybe 8 months now, has been one of the best that I've had in my career in terms of collaboration, value added, respect, fun, all the good things that you want to happen in a project. So thank you to all of you who have been involved and those of you who will be involved in the future. So my perspective, I come from a background of having a PhD in political science and a law degree. I was a lawyer on Wall Street for a while, then I was a general counsel. Then I moved more and more to what we call ESG these days, to the chief risk officer role, chief ethics and compliance, overseeing environmental health and safety. So I did that in the corporate world for about 18 years. In the last 10 years or so on my own as an advisor to business and to government and to nonprofits. And I've always thought about these portfolio of issues that we often call intangibles, which are these environmental, social governance, and technology, as part of a portfolio that businesses, especially since I'm in the business world more than anything else, haven't paid sufficient attention to, for better and for worse. For worse in the sense that as long as they don't have a crisis, they'll keep on moving, and then the crisis will hit. And I think that a deliberate, systematic approach to ESG plus technology issues behooves businesses today, because the world is too complicated, and brand value depends about 80% these days on those issues. And so if we don't start incorporating these technology issues like generative AI and others, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, quantum is coming down the pike. So all these current and future and exponential technologies have to be part of how we do governance and how we do risk management and how we manage companies. So that's my perspective. And I also, in parallel, have been very involved with Athena for a long time now, almost 5 years, I think 4 or 5 years. And I serve on their advisory board, and I've led a number of salons and peer group recently. And we too, after the sort of emergence of ChatGPT in November of 2022, we have a monthly salon called Ripped from the Headlines. And believe it or not, we had, I think, 3 generative AI related monthly salons or peer groups at the heels of that. And it kind of came together with what Heidi and Joyce were doing. And then Erin brought us all together, and the rest is history. Here we are. So I just want to say that it's so important for us to have our diverse voices together. Diversity, we're mostly women, or we're only women, but every other kind of diversity is represented here. And we think that that's a voice that is not properly represented. In fact, it's very badly represented in the mainstream media, in government, in business, in terms of decision-making, policy-making, et cetera, when it comes to these really important technologies. And I think the good news is we're starting relatively early on the generative AI piece, at least, to talk about this stuff. and make, develop tools and make decisions that are more responsible, more ethical, et cetera. So I have hope that we can still nip this in the bud, not like social media, which kind of went out of control. And so I think the opportunity for progress is unbelievable that these new technologies are offering us, but I think the dangers are big too. So we all have to sort of pull together. And thank you again to Athena and to Aaron, especially for really hosting this and making this happen.
Thank you all. Hopefully you can see just from getting to hear more from my co-chairs that not only do we have subject matter expertise in forming this, but just a lot of passion and care and a real sense of servant leadership. And I think, again, when we look at what all the different facets that we're facing and all the different really thorny questions that we're all sort of grappling with, that's a really important part of what's informing this work. And I think something that frankly makes it special and that we'll continue to build on. I'm going to go ahead and now dive into the pillars. We're going to go through each one. You'll hear from each one of us kind of covering the core themes of each of the pillars. We'll talk a little bit about next steps, and then we want to have plenty of time for questions and feedback from the group. So let's start with pillar one. And pillar one is all about fundamentally grounding in the board's core responsibility of the duty of care. And this is really at its core a commitment to being informed, to asking good questions, to making sure that we're making the best decisions for the organization based on the information that we have. Everything that the board oversees ultimately comes down to strategy oversight, risk oversight, and usually to the intersection of both of those things. And the duty of care is foundational to doing all of that really well. In this pillar, we talk about a commitment to staying educated and informed, what that looks like from a board level. While this is the fundamental responsibility of the board, it's also a really important way that the senior leadership should be looking at the organization as well. So while we talk about this as a governance framework, we're really clear that this is a tool that that is for everyone, and especially for senior leaders. Those of you that have been around me a while know that I'm an evangelist for the fact that everyone, I think, should understand the role of the board, whether or not you're serving on a board, ever want to serve on a board, because it just makes you a better leader. And I think this pillar really grounds us in the importance of that duty of care and that holistic view of the organization. We've seen this play out already in real time, all of us in the news, looking at what was happening, for example, at OpenAI and the role that the board played there. And so this really gets down to the nuts and bolts of how the board approaches its work, how this shows up in the key committees, and how we really ground AI oversight in a governance structure. So with that, I'll pass it to Heidi to talk to us about Pillar 2.
Thanks, Erin. So Pillar 2 covers ethics, risk, and responsible stewardship. And one might think about that as sort of the table stakes of board governance. But we explore it in a way that extends beyond or includes both the development of AI products as well as the usage of AI to support key functions. And while the section points out that many of the risks themselves, whether it's IP leakage or loss of privacy or reputation damage, those may not be new for boards, but AI, and particularly generative AI right now, can amplify the blind spots that boards and executives may have and accelerate unintended consequences. So creating a culture of responsible AI, as you'll hear a little bit more about in a minute, is vital. But putting in the required frameworks, policies, and reviews, even model monitoring, are now the new table stakes to accelerate companies' ability to navigate this, help their employees adopt new mindsets, and ultimately do the right thing. As I said before, responsible leadership of AI is not just about the guardrails, but how it's actually trained, deployed, and used. And one of the biggest examples that we've seen recently that showcases the huge risks are deep fakes and the significant challenges that they can bring to copyright law, privacy, and misinformation, of course, maybe first and foremost, but and you may have read about the CFO who transferred $250 million because his deep fake CEO told him to on a Zoom call. So the stakes are really, really high, but perhaps the more insidious risks are the numerous others that are actually unintended consequences. Those, whether it's those biased algorithms in loan applications or talent recruitment, those types of things. So there's a lot to think about. And so the recommendations that we have for boards are that in addition to ensuring the appropriate measures and frameworks are in place to facilitate compliance, the recommendations include considering the broader stakeholder landscape from vendors to to suppliers, as well as environmental implications of AI. So in other words, setting the ethical standards both internally and externally.
Great. Thanks, Heidi. We were just going to use the slides to tee up each section, but I saw some of you were wanting to keep them up, so we'll do that. All right, let's move on to pillar 3. Joyce.
Sure. The pillar 3 is about oversight of strategy and being adaptable. A company's AI practices have to ultimately enable and enhance the company's business and growth strategies. We have to say not every single company needs to be AI first and AI most, almost, because every AI strategy and practice and even oversight have to be grounded into this company's ultimate business strategy and value creation for shareholders. Many things we know about AI today, including data access, regulatory requirements, compliance, vendor practices, may change, honestly, 6 months down the road. Therefore, as board members, we have to recognize and emphasize the need to adopt an adaptive mindset and also encourage cross-functional collaboration. This pillar is about that. As examples, we have many companies in this ongoing report season, as you read in the news every day, actively incorporating AI in their products, services, operations, and accelerate growth or profit. For example, a financial services company, Morningstar, shared that they use AI to help them to boost productivity in evaluating and rating investment managers. On the other hand, we also see demand from investors. If you don't, as a board, address AI's importance in your business strategy. For example, earlier this week, activist investors Blackwell's Capital calls publicly on Disney board to prioritize AI to help their travel booking, crowd control, and other theme park visit experiences to improve the business profitability. So our recommendation for the board is that the board should ask questions to the management to ensure the ongoing is the keyword here, alignment of AI practices to the company's business goals and priorities. Boards should feel informed enough to discern what usage of AI is operational table stakes versus strategic or growth-oriented investments. The board also needs to consider the future, a range of potential future states, because AI is changing so fast and the competitive landscape is also changing so fast, and the past, prior experiences, adapting to transformational moments like this. It provides a useful lens to inform strategy and also board oversight. Lastly, I just want to say that awareness and potential participation in global AI alignment initiatives, depending on what type of firms or organizations are, could also be helpful for the boards to continue the oversight of the strategy. So I'll stop here and then.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Joyce. Andrea, going to take pillar 4.
Great. The pillar I'm going to talk to you about is what we call developing holistic ESG plus technology situational awareness. It's a mouthful, but basically what we're trying to convey by this pillar is the need for both management and the board to take a step back and look at the big picture. Look at the systemic situation that's affecting their particular footprint as a business or as an enterprise. And so having a holistic view into those ESG plus technology issues, both from a risk management standpoint, but also an opportunity creation standpoint. And that's something I always think is linked, but business people don't always see that link. And so the pillar really, it talks about marrying the ESG and T issues, risks, and opportunities to your enterprise risk management and your strategy. And that means having, from a board standpoint, a proactive view at ERM on a regular basis as a board in terms of risk governance, understanding your universe of tech risks, especially since that's what we're talking about here, and how does AI, Gen AI, and other potential technologies both affect your business, and also how can you bring it into your business to create those new opportunities. And so that intersection also is important from a tech preparedness and crisis preparedness standpoint. So making sure your crisis management, your business continuity, your data protection are all kept up to date for purposes of the new technologies that are coming in. And then doing the future risk scanning is really, really important. We don't do enough of that in companies. We kind of do the snapshot of the time or of the past. We have to do much more of the future scenario planning. So what does that mean in terms of examples? Clearly, if we pick out the E, the S, the G, and the T, that we could have a number of many different examples, frankly. But the ongoing governance saga at OpenAI is a really interesting mix of all those things in terms of governance of technology, in terms of how do you create safety, security, ethics around something that nobody knows where it's going. So that's an ongoing example. Another governance example that some of us are critical of is how, for example, Meta and Zuckerberg handle these issues, and they've done an open source Gen AI with Llama, which in some cases people say that's great because everybody has access to these tools, but since they have not been fully proven, there could be security and safety and ethics issues there. And then we have the intersection with environmental issues. We all know about the energy consumption issues. There was a story in the Financial Times just yesterday about how the AI boom, which is basically driven by Gen AI, sparks concern about big tech's water consumption. So water is another angle that is really important. Then there are social issues. There was a UK startup that just raised $14 million to develop AI-boosted adaptable vaccines. So there's incredible opportunity for new products and wonderful new things for society. And there's also the other side of the coin. We have a case here of a company that's been ordered by the UK government to stop using facial recognition to monitor staff. And that was also in the Financial Times. So all of those cases, we also have AI governance issues. Apple is being looked at more and more by shareholders. Large shareholders are looking at whether or not, and they're saying that they're not disclosing enough about their internal AI safety and security procedures. So there's going to be large shareholders looking at that. And then panning out to the very big picture, there's geopolitical issues. There's AI, Gen AI, and other technology competition amongst the big countries, the big companies as well. And then what does that mean from a geopolitical standpoint in terms of cybersecurity, et cetera? So our recommendations for the board are a few, but basically ask management if they're thinking about these things and acting on these things in a holistic and in a proactive way. And how are they doing that? What kind of resources do they have internally? What kind of due diligence are they doing? Are they looking around corners to see where the next tech competition might come in? Are they prepared? So are you understanding those risks and those opportunities? Do you have the right board members? This is one of my big pet peeves that I talk about all the time, but don't have just CEOs and CFOs. Have other people there, the diversity of wealth of experience and, similar to the group that we have here. And then again, are you asking the right questions, the necessary questions? And are you bringing in the necessary experts? And so with that, I will turn it back over to our fearless leader, Erin.
Thank you, Andrea. Some great examples in there, and we'll talk more about this, about why building on this framework, it's really important to start talking about how this shows up in different industries. We know there are unique challenges there. And Andrea's great examples also remind me that one of the other things that's wonderful about the playbook is there's so much other great thought leadership out there, and we've pulled in as much as possible, and we'll continue to update additional resources, so it really becomes a pretty holistic tool, hopefully, for you. Megan, we've talked to us about Pillar 5 and talent.
Absolutely. So Pillar 5 is around talent, incentives, and culture. And so while a lot of the attention and conversation is often really focused on the technology of AI, the impact of these capabilities is really driven by people. And as someone who has a lot of battle wounds from having built and deployed AI in many organizations, the people side is the hardest and the most critically important to getting this right. And so the talent strategy, the culture, and making sure that you're aligning incentives to the ethical and responsible use of AI are really critical pieces of AI governance. So an example of how this might show up is last November, there was a report accusing Sports Illustrated of using AI-generated content and deep-faked generated images of journalists. And then the subsequent December firing of the CEO, I think, is a clear illustration of the importance of setting expectations, the communication channels, and the accountability around AI. So in the playbook, the recommendations for boards include evaluating your talent strategy and the impacts on your talent strategy, both in the here, which I think is where the conversation tends to be focused, but also aligned to your future organization. So as Andrea was saying, of those future scenarios, what those look like and how should your talent strategy adapt and evolve to meet those. Another recommendation is around building and reinforcing a culture of responsible and ethical use of AI. A number of studies have shown that something like 50% of employees are using AI tools at work, but only a very small fraction of companies have given any sort of guidance or guardrails around what people can and can't do with those tools. And making sure that you're really aligning your incentives to risk and strategy. So as others have outlined around trying to strike that right balance, the part around the incentive structures is really critical to making sure that you're reinforcing that balance of what you want to see for your organization. And then finally, really planning for unintended consequences. So others have highlighted some examples of what that has looked like. But what will you do if and when something happens that you hadn't anticipated? And having that plan around how you're going to take action, I think, can put you in a much better position to respond and adapt as things continue.
Great. I think we
she
dropped
froze.
out. Yeah, we dropped out just at the end, Megan, but it was good timing because I think we were just at the end. One just quick example to Megan's point about that talent pillar is one of our board members read an advanced copy, and the first thing she did after she finished reading it was call one of her leadership team on one of her boards to say, what are we doing about our team members using these outside tools, because it really got her thinking. So it's already being put to good use. Thank you to all of you for helping to lay out kind of an overview of what's in there, what's in the playbook. As you'll see when you get your advanced copy here in about a week and a half, we get into a lot more detail again about recommendations, questions, and just how to be thinking about each of these key pieces. In terms of next steps, and then we'll move into some Q&A, and would love to hear your reactions, thoughts. And some of this is reiterating what I said at the top, but really we want this to be a tool that's used broadly, that can have as much sort of impact and be supporting organizations and leaders everywhere. So in terms of how we want it to be used, how you can help, we really just want to get the word out and make sure that as many people know about it as possible and are able to use it in ways that are helpful to the work that they're doing. As I said, we are releasing it in digital form only, and that is so it can be more accessible and also that it can be easily updated. A lot of these principles, as you saw, are pretty foundational. We don't necessarily expect them to change a lot. At the same time, we know that this is a really dynamic and fast-moving topic, issue, and the landscape is really changing. So we wanted it to be adaptable. And then, as I've said a couple of different times, and this is again a place where we'd love for you to be thinking about other ways that you might want to be involved moving forward, because we want this to be both a foundation and a container for a much larger conversation and set of tools and solutions over the coming months and years. And so we're thinking about things, as I said, about case studies. How are you using this inside your organizations in ways that might be a model for others? How are we thinking about how this might show up differently in different industries and some of the unique challenges that are industry specific? So really want to be clear that we know this is not sort of a holistic answer. Again, I don't think anyone has a holistic answer, but we really feel strongly that you must start with the governance framework and the right governance framework to set the right tone at the top, to set the right priorities and build from there. And so that's really the spirit with which we offer this up to all of you and to the broader community. And with that, I'd love to open it up for Q&A. I saw one question already come through in the chat, so we can start there, but would love questions or just reactions, thoughts, anything that has sort of come up for you as you've listened to us lay this out. Paula had a question about board education, and given that this is such a dynamic topic, how often should the board be trained on this? Who should be responsible for that? I will definitely give you my perspective first, as this has been my area of expertise for a long time, which is training boards and thinking deeply about director education. I would say a couple things. One is absolutely, I think, usually the general counsel, corporate secretary, or whoever that is on your board that is thinking about board education, this should be top of mind. It should be top of the agenda. So are you, what's your plan for bringing in an outside expert to brief the board? And what kind of outside expert? Because there are so many facets to AI. It's going to be most relevant based on some of the challenges that your company might uniquely be facing, given the industry. Or are you sort of at more of a starting point where it getting a more landscape briefing would be helpful? Maybe it's both. I also think, too, more broadly, that we really need to, as directors, and this really does get back to the duty of care at a fundamental way, take responsibility for our own education as board members. So I would be asking for sure what the plan is from a company-wide standpoint in terms of making sure that the board is fully informed and learning together. But this is also a place where we really need to take responsibility ourselves and be coming to sessions like this, maybe finding tools like this and introducing them into our boardrooms, and making time and really seeing it as a core part of your job description and your function as a board member, to making sure that you're staying on top of it. The good news is, I think, because there is such a collective understanding of how impactful AI is going to be, as we know, it's everywhere. So there's no shortage of opportunity for you to be, engaging in this conversation in different ways. So that's my perspective. I'd love to hear if anyone else, Andrea, has a different take or wants to add to that.
I just have a very practical, simple take, which is find the person if you're a board member and you're talking to management, or if you're in management, you're the CEO, find the person in your leadership ranks who is the systemic thinker, the connector of dots, the person who sees the big picture, and who also is good at bringing the right teams together. Because it could be the general counsel, it could be a chief risk officer, it could be the head of a division, it could be any number of people. It's more goes back to the character and qualities of that person rather than what did they study. And I think that that is kind of one of the things for the future that we have to think about. The Renaissance person, perhaps, or the mini Renaissance person who can see this and help the company or the organization pull it all together. So I think that is a key linchpin here.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. Really good point. Katrinka has a comment and a question. It sounds like Katrinka's one of her boards is already on top of this, which is great to hear. Do we have experiences with how to approve AI use cases in a company? How are we thinking about what is the legal guidance and the guidance that we're providing company-wide? I know this came up a lot in the playbook. Megan, do you want to take a stab at that first, and then have others jump in?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two things here. So one is, at that board and executive team level is setting the strategy and setting some, sort of guardrails or guidelines around where to kind of focus. I think the other piece then is you really need a cross-functional team. So yes, you need legal, both in terms of what your regulatory landscape looks like, as well as your contractual obligations and what you are allowed to do with the data you have. But you also need information security to evaluate how you're doing this, especially if you're partnering with other firms in your solution build. And then you also need folks from your IT organization. So how are you going to implement this? What are your system constraints, which is often kind of the key falling down point for a lot of analytics and AI projects. So really understanding all of those things up front so that as you're designing a solution, it is actually designed to be successful. So I think it's that true cross-functional approach and getting the perspectives of all of the different key areas of your organization is really critical to both determining which use cases as well as to framing them in such a way that the solutions are more likely to be successful.
Can I ask a quick follow-up just to see if anybody's seeing like this is driving innovation in any companies? Because a lot of those teams are great from a structural perspective, but I'm actually curious if this is actually an opener for innovative thinking by leveraging the cross-functional nature that should be in there. And I'm just wondering if anybody has sort of an innovation example.
I can give another, Carrie, I think you have one. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I have one where we were working with some customers who were sitting on a big pile of data that they hadn't really monetized, was proprietary data. And we helped them establish a grid where they were prioritizing things you might do with AI, because the possibilities are so broad that a big challenge a lot of companies face is like, how do you narrow that down to the one or two projects you really should tackle first? And so we help them build a grid of feasibility and potential business outcomes. So it's not so different than how you might prioritize other portfolio management decisions on feasibility, level of effort, potential outcomes. What we added to that in the context of AI was how ready was their data, because training a model was so important with the data and making sure you have the right permissions for it and you're not going to expose anything. So we help them build a grid to prioritize their different projects, much as you would for any portfolio decisions, but we added the dimension of data readiness. And that helped them bubble up and realize that they were sitting on a gold mine where they could innovate and make available API calls into this treasure chest of proprietary data they had and monetize that. So I felt like that was a nice example of innovation where, they could allow their customers to make API calls into their treasure trove and get some value from that.
Great. Stephanie also put a couple of links in the chat that are a good resource for folks as well. I also put in the chat, for those of you that haven't received the executive summary and introduction yet, you can email Kaylin at athenaalliance.com, and I put her email in the chat as well. Other questions or thoughts, comments? Let's see here. Stephanie is coming with all the resources. Thank you. It's great.
I love all things Gen AI.
I love it. I know you do. Both Stephanie and Carrie, as I mentioned, of Real, Sid, we're all also co-authors of the playbook. So as you can also see, we hopefully did some great work, but also had a lot of fun together. Any other questions?
Let's not forget of Real.
Yes, I did mention it for Real. Any other questions or thoughts? Would love any reactions. As I mentioned,
Hi.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Please go, Brenda.
Oh yeah, hi. So is the goal to just disseminate the playbook out to the community, or are we thinking about putting it somewhere in print or inserting it into some, magazines and trade magazines of that sort?
Yeah, good question. So the main home for the playbook will be a dedicated web page that we've built where people can access a PDF copy. So it'll be really easy to share. And we also have been working with a wonderful PR team, Scott Grady and his team at Magnitude. I think Scott's here on the call with us, and are working on a more fulsome plan to disseminate it both in terms of media and press and to other organizations that are key stakeholders and thought leaders around this topic that we think should see it and again want to partner with as we move forward and think about how to build on it. And so again, also a call out to all of you. We know all of you are incredibly well connected. You're working on different facets of this in some form or fashion in all the things that you're doing now. So if there are either thought leaders, influencers, whether that's organizations or people that should be on our radar as we think about getting this out more broadly, and again, continuing to build from here with the additional work that we want to do around this topic, please let us know. I'll also put my email in the chat, and I think most of you know how to get a hold of me, but would love to hear any thoughts that you have from the work that you're doing about who else we should be talking to.
And Brenda, the webpage will be publicly accessible. It won't be only accessible for Athena members. It will be a public page.
Awesome. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. I was curious, how can we help amplify during the PR launch? Is there a date? Can we repost on LinkedIn? What would be most helpful?
Great question. Yes to all of those things. It will be publicly available March 12th. Would absolutely love for you to post about it, to amplify it on your LinkedIn. We can even provide some tools to make that easier for you, some copy and some hashtags that you can use so that it'll make it easier and you can customize it as you see fit. Scott, I think you're here with us. Is there anything else that you want to add there? I saw Scott, maybe he had to drop off. But the short answer is yes, we really want to get this out to as many people as possible and love this community and your willingness to support us and to support each other. And so yes, yes, and yes, and we'll follow up with some more ways to make that easy for you to do. Thanks, Jenny.
Of course, happy to.
May I just add one point? I think I just want to say this is just the start of a how to make our voices heard and impactful. So don't take this as a once and done. I would love to see every one of you to think about how they will be applied, or are we missing something in your specific industry and domain? So let's work together and make this even more powerful, impactful as a project that we all own.
If I could underscore that with a double red marker, I think one thing that has motivated me a lot, and I know others, maybe I'm a little bit noisier about it, but there's only 2% of venture capital going to women. And there are media biases taking place every day in terms of who is profiled as an AI genius. There was one story that was put out, I think it was in November, by the New York Times, the 12 AI luminaries. And except for one man who was a man of color, all the others were white men. And again, I have nothing against white men, but this is not where all this great thinking is coming from. And in terms of the contribution that we can make as women, as executives, as experts, with more of a social and communal outlook on some of these really serious social issues, I think that's one of the motivators for me personally, is that we think about that communal impact, social impact, environmental impact, and our children, they're growing up with these machines. What does that mean? We need to think more and more about that. So just
both so well said. And I think, again, really underscores for me what I think is so special about this community. And frankly, the way this project has come together, which hopefully you've gotten a sense for that now, I think really does speak to that more sort of kind of communal collaborative spirit that we bring. It wasn't a sort of top-down approach at all. It was incredibly grassroots. And to Joyce and Andrea's good point, that's exactly what we want to keep going, because we know that we are better together, and the more perspectives and the more insight that we can bring to bear on this conversation, the richer and more effective we're going to be in terms of really providing the right kind of leadership and oversight that we need. Excellent. Are there any other questions? We just have a couple minutes before we wrap up. Thanks, Deborah. I see your note. I'll make sure that we follow up. All right, well, you have my contact info. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm the only Erin Essenmacher, I think, in the world, but definitely on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty easy to find. So please, if you have any additional thoughts, questions, you want to become more involved, don't hesitate to reach out and connect. We really see this, not to be too lofty, but I really think that what we're building here is more of a movement around AI governance and ethical AI governance, and we really want you to be part of that. So thank you all for making time today. Thanks again to my wonderful co-chairs, to all of our great co-authors, and to the community broadly for all of your wisdom and informing this process, and look forward to staying in touch and rolling this out and getting your feedback once it's public. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you,
Take care.
everyone.